275,000 federal workers gone, fired, told to pack their desks and leave, in the name of efficiency. And after all that, after the biggest government workforce reduction in modern American history, federal spending didn't go down, it went up, by 6%. That's not a rounding error, that's not inflation adjustments, that is 6 cents more on every single dollar, after they promised you trillions in savings. So where did the money go? And why did the White House kill the very program it created to find it? To understand what happened, you need to go back to late 2024. The national debt had just crossed $36 trillion. Interest payments alone were eating over $1 trillion a year, more than the entire defense budget. Something had to give. And when Elon Musk stood on a stage and promised to slash $2 trillion from federal spending, 80 million people believed him. Not because they trusted Musk, because they were desperate for anyone, to stop the bleeding. DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, was supposed to be that someone. An army of tech workers and engineers embedded inside federal agencies, finding waste, cutting fraud, eliminating redundancy. Sounds reasonable, right? Find the waste, cut it, save the taxpayer. Simple. Except it wasn't simple. And the people running it knew that from day one. Here's what DOGE actually did. They identified federal employees to cut tens of thousands of workers at agencies like the IRS, the Department of Education, USAID, the EPA, entire teams eliminated overnight. 9% of the federal workforce, gone. That's not a trim, that's a chainsaw. And the headlines celebrated it. Mission accomplished. Government efficiency achieved. But here's the part they didn't put in the press release. While federal employment dropped by 9%, overall government spending increased by 6%. Read that again. Fewer workers, more spending. How is that even possible? How do you fire 250,000 people and spend more money? Because the things that actually cost money, the things that are 80% of the federal budget, were never on the table. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, interest on the debt, defense. Those 5 categories alone consume over 4 out of every $5 the government spends. DOGE never touched them, not a single dollar. They were told explicitly not to. And this is where it gets really interesting. In March of 2026, a former DOGE lead advisor named Nate Kavanaugh sat in front of a congressional committee and said something that should have been front-page news. He testified, under oath, that the White House shut down DOGE spending cut mandate. Not Congress, not the agencies. The White House itself, the same administration that created DOGE, told them to stop cutting. Think about that for a second. The most popular government initiative among conservatives and independents, possibly in a generation, was killed by the people who launched it. And they didn't announce it. They didn't hold a press conference. A DOGE employee had to testify about it under oath for anyone to find out. So why would a president kill his own signature efficiency program? The answer is both obvious and uncomfortable. Because the real purpose of DOGE was never to cut spending. It was to cut people. Look at which agencies got gutted. The IRS, which was in the middle of hiring 87,000 new agents to audit high-income taxpayers and corporations, gone. USAID, which distributed foreign development money with independent oversight, gutted. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which had just opened investigations into 3 major bank fee structures, defunded. Every single agency that was cut had one thing in common. They were investigating, regulating, or auditing people with money and power. And the agencies that spend the actual money, the ones writing the checks for defense contracts, entitlement programs, and debt interest, untouched. This wasn't an efficiency program. This was a protection racket disguised as fiscal responsibility. Fire the auditors, keep the spenders. And the math proves it. The IRS estimated that every dollar spent on enforcement returns $6 in recovered tax revenue. By cutting those 87,000 agents, the government didn't save money. It lost billions in uncollected taxes from the wealthiest Americans. But those lost billions don't show up in the DOGE savings tracker. They show up in the deficit, which hit $2.3 trillion in 2025. and nobody connects the dots. This isn't new. The playbook has been running for decades. Every administration since Reagan has promised to cut waste and streamline government. And every single time, the same thing happens. They cut the workforce, headlines celebrate, and 5 years later, spending is higher than before, because the machinery that generates spending, the contracts, the entitlements, the interest, was never touched. In 1995, the government shutdown was supposed to force fiscal discipline. Federal spending in 96 was 7% higher than 94. In 2013, sequestration was supposed to be the nuclear option for cutting spending. By 2015, spending had returned to pre-sequester levels and then some. And now DOGE, same promise, same theater, same result. The only difference is this time, they fired 250,000 real people to sell the illusion. The government doesn't shrink, it reshapes. The workers leave, but the contracts stay. The oversight disappears, but the spending accelerates. And the people who profit from that spending, they never miss a single payment. Now the defenders of DOGE will tell you the program was sabotaged, that Congress blocked the real cuts, that the deep state resisted from within. And there's a grain of truth in that. Congress does have the power of the purse, and they did refuse to codify most of the proposed cuts. But that doesn't explain why the White House itself killed the mandate. That's not Congress, that's the executive branch shutting down its own initiative. The uncomfortable truth is that no president, no matter what they promise on the campaign trail, actually wants to cut federal spending. Because spending is power. Every contract, every grant, every subsidy is leverage. Cut the spending, you cut the leverage. DOGE was designed to look like a revolution while protecting the structure that makes the revolution impossible. Fire the workers, keep the machine, celebrate the cuts, ignore the increase. And 80 million people cheered because they were told the problem was lazy government workers, not the $4.8 trillion system. Those workers were a rounding error inside. The oldest trick in politics: give the crowd a villain they can see, so they stop looking for the one they can't. So what does this mean for you? It means the $36 trillion debt is not being addressed, not by DOGE, not by Congress, not by anyone. It means the interest payments on that debt, already over $1.1 trillion a year, will keep growing. And that money comes from somewhere. It comes from your purchasing power. It comes from the inflation that quietly eats your savings every single year. Every dollar the government borrows is a dollar that gets paid back through inflation or taxes. There is no third option. And right now, they're choosing inflation because it's invisible. You don't get a bill. Your grocery prices just go up. Your rent just goes up. Your purchasing power just goes down. Ask yourself this: if your bank account balance stayed the same for 5 years, but everything you buy costs 30% more, did you keep your money? Or did someone take it without telling you? That's not a hypothetical. That's what happened between 2020 and 2025. And DOGE didn't fix it. DOGE was the distraction while it happened. The lesson here isn't that DOGE failed. The lesson is that the system is designed so that programs like DOGE will always fail. The spending machine doesn't have an off switch. It has a PR department. Which means the only person who can protect your wealth is you. Not a government program, not a politician's promise, not a billionaire's efficiency crusade. Diversify out of the dollar. Understand that your savings account is losing value every single day it sits there. Learn about hard assets, about Bitcoin, about anything with a fixed supply that can't be printed into oblivion. 275,000 people lost their jobs so that the government could spend 6% more money. That's not efficiency. That's theater. And now you know the script. Stay sovereign.